Hi mermaids! Odds are good that if you're scuba diving in the Midwest, you are going to end up at some point transporting your gear. And most of us don't really think about what do we need to do to transport that gear until all of a sudden we're trying to figure it out. And now we've got this wet gear and we're trying to figure out what to do with it. So we're going to talk today about the things you should think about and ways to prepare for transporting your dive gear back and forth to the quarry or wherever it is you're diving in the Midwest. Even if it's not about the Midwest, when you're traveling and like rent a car or something like that, you're going to be on vacation trying to figure this out the same way. So these are the things you need to keep in mind. Before we get too far, I wanted to remind you to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media at Midwest Mermaid Scuba so that you can get more great videos just like this. But now let's take a look inside. First of all, if you have the opportunity to buy an SUV, a standard size SUV will easily transport gear for at least 2 or 3 people. We start getting towards 4. It's just going to depend on how many tanks and how much gear those people have. If you're transporting tanks, it makes everything a little bit crazier. But this is a cardboard box. This cardboard box has lived in the back of my car for several years now. The reason I have this back here is because no matter what I do and no matter how hard I try to get my gear ready, there's still going to be wet stuff, right? And I don't want that stink and that wet going into the carpet of my car. So I have this cardboard box. It's actually would be a whole box, so it's kind of double layer. But this box has been in my car soaking up water for dive trips for a very long time. Now, if you're transporting tanks, the things you're going to want to keep in mind is you want the valve towards the car. That way, if anything were to happen, and something happened with the valve, then the tank would go backwards, not forwards towards you. A lot of people will use soft weights. They'll put soft weights next to the tank so that they don't roll around. We don't use soft weights. We thought we wanted to use soft weights when we first started diving, and then we were transporting them around the car and they were just always wet. There was just so much water in them that we decided that hard weights were much better because they dry very easily. So if I'm going to transport a couple of tanks, I actually created this out of pool noodles and paracord. So this is my arts and crafts. It's not the greatest. They actually sell ones that are made much, much better than this one. But this one has done very well for me for several years. So this is what I use to keep my tanks from sliding around and banging into each other. It does kind of move on the paracord, so that's been kind of an issue, but I always find a way to kind of work it out. So. Okay, so now that I have my tanks loaded and they're not going to rattle around, nothing's going to happen, they're pretty secure, then I can just take and I can put my gear right on top of it, next to it, whatever. Nothing's going to happen with these because I've got them kind of secure. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can load your gear, and you're going to want to find some kind of waterproof container, because even if you're rinsing your gear at the quarry or you're coming straight out or whatever, there's just going to be water. So you got to find some waterproof way to keep that from messing up your car. So a lot of people going back and forth to the quarries will get one of these plastic containers, and you can put all of your gear in there. You can put it right on top of your tanks, put it right next to it, whatever. But this is going to keep a whole lot of gear inside of it, and it's going to keep the water out of your car. What's really nice is that when you get it home, you can throw it in the front yard, you can throw the water hose right into it, get everything rinsed off, and so then you have, some pre-rinse before you go in and wash it, so you're not taking all that quarry stuff and, washing it out. Another great option is a waterproof duffel. So I got this Aqualung waterproof duffel several years back. I don't think Aqualung even sells them anymore, but I'm sure somebody sells a big waterproof duffel like this. This thing will carry all my gear, including a wetsuit. So it makes it really nice. And it too, I can bring it home. I can just throw it in the front yard. I can throw a water hose in it, whatever. But it's going to keep all of my gear from getting my car wet. The other nice thing about it is that I can really kind of take it anywhere. I take this thing on dive boats. I take it everywhere. And I can keep my dry stuff inside. I can keep my wet stuff from getting my car wet, all of those things. And luckily, when I take my stuff out and set up my gear on the dive boat, this thing will tuck perfectly right underneath my 2 tanks on the dive boat. You just kind of have to smush it a little bit. But It goes really nice in the car. The one bad thing about this bag is that I've used it so much and I've set it down in gravel so much that there's actually a pinhole or two in the bottom. So I'm gonna have to do some mending to mend those holes and get it back to completely waterproof. It just drips a little bit, but it's still a drip, right? So, so a little less sturdy than one of these tubs. The other thing that I've seen done with the tubs is, since these tubs are stackable, I've seen people before where they would stack 2 tubs, and in the first tub they would drill some holes and then they would keep them stacked. That way when they put their gear in, all the water runs through to the other one, and then they can dump all the water out and keep all of that stuff draining instead of your gear kind of sitting in your little quarry soup, right? Hopefully this video gave you a little bit of insight on traveling with dive gear and got you thinking about how you're going to transport your gear back and forth, or some tips and tricks that you might use to make it a little bit easier and maybe less wet in your car. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great videos like this, and to follow us on social media at Midwest Mermaid Scuba. And if you're a female scuba diver in the Midwest, join our Facebook group and we would love to meet you at one of our meetups. And don't forget, happy bubbles.